You sometimes laugh really loud.
Who?
Cease.
Yeah, you do.
And then it maxes out.
I won't laugh.
Cease looks like he's ready to rob a bank.
I'm not going to laugh.
It's been a while since we've done this, and this is the Social Buddies crew plus Chris Belt
the
again.
English buddy.
Yeah, our English buddy, who might as well be a social buddy.
Yeah.
Welcome.
And it's nearing the end of summer. It is July 21st. Almost a month until we're supposed to go back to school.
We're sitting in a garage.
Yeah, in my garage. This is Stephen Robinson, and for those of you who are new to this, I teach sociology and history at Normal Community High School.
I'm Kevin Cease.
I'm Pat Lawler.
And Chris Bell.
Yeah, and so Cease, Lawler, and I teach social studies, and Chris teaches English at Normal Community.
Mm-hmm.
This is our dumb podcast called Social Buddies. And the last episode we did was we had just left school because of the COVID-19 pandemic, and we did a social distancing buddies episode, a day in the life of social distancing. The episode previous to that was with Belt and another colleague of ours, Ms. Baker, and it was about race, really, in the school and institutional racism. And then, of course, after COVID, yet another several high-profile incidences in which Black Americans are being brutalized and murdered by the state in this country came to the fore of our culture once again, and it's been a summer of anti-racist uprisings and protesting, which it's interesting that we had you on the show, Chris.
I think I knew it was coming. That's why the conversation went that route.
Yeah.
I was going to say I knew it was coming.
And so we have a lot to talk about today, potentially.
Can I start off with one quick thing?
Please.
I just want to say how much I appreciate you being here, Belt, because I know some of your English colleagues started their own podcast.
Oh, yeah.
On
competition. What is that called?
They're looking at Back to the Future and other movies and evaluating them, but I feel like by coming here with us, you're saying, no, I'm one of you guys.
I guess in a sense.
Do you think they started that solely
to spite you guys?
Despite us?
I think,
or
yeah,
because
I think it was.
They were inspired by us?
I think you should take it more as inspiration than
Good.
competition.
Yeah, who is that? It's Bovenkirk?
Krogmeyer, Bovenkirk, and
Feeney?
Feeney.
Okay, well, we don't want to say
they're good. They're good people.
because he's the one that publishes us on the Ink Spot.
Yeah, they're our sponsor.
He's our boss.
Oh, someone's mowing now.
Yeah.
Come on, Steph. Can you talk to your neighbors?
He said he'd be done by 9. So I should mention we're in my garage. I think C said that, and we're all wearing masks.
Yeah.
Because we, unlike a huge percentage of our population, take medical science seriously. And the ventilation, there's not a whole lot of breeze in the garage. We're sitting within a few feet of one another. And also we are hoping that students who listen to this understand the importance, despite what they may or may not have heard from people in the community, when they come back to school wearing their masks.
Maybe what have we been doing this summer?
Yeah, let's get it up there.
What have you been using your time for?
Let's start with Cease.
Oh, geez. I've been doing, well, actually at the beginning of the summer I was doing a lot of birding, going to a lot of nature preserves, checking out the wildlife and just trying to learn some new bird species that were migrating. In the summer months it hasn't really been that exciting with new birds, so we'll wait till the fall migration to see that. And then I've been playing a lot of disc golf with you, Robinson, and Witzig and Schweinberg, and some other people. But
social studies disc golf team.
So doing that and hanging out with my kids at home and
wearing camouflage pants.
Yeah, I did some work. I did wear some camo. I didn't join the militia, but I was volunteering at the Parklands, Sweeney Woods, trimming some trees.
So did you need to like hide in the brush?
No, the pants are treated with permethrin, which is like keeps the ticks off you.
Oh,
so that's why I treated those so that they.
Is that stuff like hazardous to you? Like
no, it's only hazardous to cats.
Okay.
Like if you sprayed it on a cat, it would kill the cats. But
oh wow, okay.
Yeah, this summer, like C said, I've been playing disc golf like once a week at least, and doing a lot of music stuff. I put out a record just like a week ago with one of my bands. Reading a lot. Oh, I've lost count of how many protests and marches I've been to. Been very active with that stuff.
Oh, okay. Well, I started off pretty eventful. I got knee surgery like a month in. So, wow, it's really pouring. But I got knee surgery, so I've been doing a lot of rehab. A lot of walking around the neighborhood. Recently bought Settlers of Catan. I've been playing a lot of Settlers of Catan.
Oh, nice.
wow.
It's been a good source of friction in our house between my kids and I. Well, I mean, it's like pushing them.
Yeah, no.
I mean, I do like clobber them every single time I play. I refuse to give them advice, but so that's been fun. But that's about it. I've been doing a lot of reading, hanging out.
I have small kids, so I wish I could be reading more. I've been reading just like articles and stuff like that, but mainly taking care of the kids. I got a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old. I've been to a few protests, not more than I can count, but I've been to some. And I had the GLT interview.
Oh yeah, that was good.
That was
That was pretty amazing. I was surprised at the response by it and how much it got shared and passed around. And I got a lot of like personal messages, and so that was really eye-opening. And I guess also because of that, I'm supposed to speak at this rally to like advocate for more black education.
Oh really?
oh cool.
And that's the 29th at Martin Luther King Park. I just got a message yesterday to speak on that. So, but yeah, other than that, raising the kids and doing that, affirming black identity.
All right, so we've been busy.
Trying to be.
What should we jump into first? Besides, should we jump into the Rona? Should we jump into the global uprising?
I feel like we're already jumping into the Rona every time we leave our house.
Like, you don't have to name names in terms of people you know, but like, do you guys know anybody that's contracted or has coronavirus?
Yeah.
Like, how close to home is it for you guys?
Yeah, I actually don't know anyone that's had it. And I've never been around anyone that has.
Same with me. I don't know anybody that's had it, and I haven't been around anybody either.
A good friend of mine had it, and he's in Minneapolis, and it hit him really hard. And I know of a couple other people, but I don't know them personally. But they're like friends of friends. But I haven't been in the vicinity of anybody that I know who's had it.
That's good to know. Since we're, I haven't been in the vicinity of anyone either, but one of my college friends recently posted on Facebook that I guess her husband, she's a librarian at like a high school up in the Chicago suburbs, and they've been super precautious, like no play dates, no leaving the house, like, and he still contracted it anyway, and then she got it like a day later, and I think it's hitting them really hard. But she's wondering, like, if we've been this cautious and we haven't been at school, what's it going to be like when we're at school? Even if we're trying to be precautious, like, it's just not easy to do because, like, y'all know what those hallways are like. Like, they're even with half the amount of students.
With half the students, social distancing is just an impossibility.
And that's at the high school level. Think about like elementary school kids that are picking their nose, digging for gold constantly.
Kids are
like,
pretty much feral until they're in 9th grade. So
That'd be interesting.
Yeah.
I still wonder if things will change before then too. I mean,
I feel like they will because I don't know. Just the reality of the situation is, if we go back to school, kids and teachers will die. Like that's just the sad, bald-faced reality of it all. So, and you start to see stories now of like districts suing the state for reopening, and people making the decision to just go all remote. So I'm still holding out that that's going to happen in these next few weeks. Is that it's like, you know what, this isn't the best choice. It has problems, but just for the safety of everyone, all remote learning this year until we figure this out.
And then there's I saw there was going to be a rally, maybe it was last weekend or something, in Springfield for the people that don't want to wear masks, like the mask-free people. And
The Million Maskless March.
that was it. I think that was the name of it.
Are you serious?
Yeah. And so there are.
Please tell me that's not real.
No, it is.
Totally is real.
Yeah, so they're like co-opting the imagery of the Million Man March where black dudes are trying to change the perception of themselves in society.
Yes.
They just want to make it about not wearing masks.
So there's that element that we have it as well. So there's the people that want to go entirely remote. You got the people that don't want to wear masks. And like I was at Jewel yesterday shopping like around 9 o'clock. I just ran in and there was this one dude walking around with no mask on, and it's like, I know Jewel has a policy now in the state. You're not supposed to be in there without a mask. And maybe he has health problems. I don't know. I wasn't going to say or judge him, but it just, there's people out there that don't want to do that. So
Some people
it's going to
are
make it hard.
defiant just to be defiant. It's like, I was at a place recently and there was a guy that was there with his family, and we were outside, but they had a mask on policy, and he's like, what do you mean we got to put a mask on? We're outside. And it's like,
where are these
freaking
people
mask on.
who care so much about freedom when you have secret Gestapo in Portland showing up in unmarked vehicles, spiriting people away into dark facilities without any badge, without any notification of what law they've supposedly broken? Like, where are the liberty-loving people with that? I don't understand. It's so hypocritical.
It is, and I feel like this is something I touched on in my interview that he included a little bit. It's about these people are predominantly white, and the problem is you're violating their comfort. It's their, and that sense of entitlement of like, I can do whatever I want, and being told you can't do what you want violates your comfort. So like, I will not stand for this. That's the only explanation I can have for like, because if you try to think about it, I don't say normally, but when you try to think about it rationally or logically, it doesn't make any sense at all. But that's part of our racist culture. Like, racism is illogical, and it makes people do illogical things and have illogical perceptions of the world. And you know, one of the things, it's the comfort piece. It's like, this is making me uncomfortable. That's why the protests are like, I want a haircut, or the Karen compilations of people like, I want my teeth cleaned. You better open this up. It's like,
it's called a toothbrush. Why don't you
it's like, brush your teeth really hard. Like, brush your teeth 5 times a day. Like, what?
Floss.
You can even buy one of those little scrapey things on Amazon.
That's what I'm saying. There's so many other options, so it's weird that you'd insist on this thing. And again, it's like, it makes me uncomfortable to be told I can't do whatever I want when I want. So when they're snatching those people up in Portland, those people who are out there demonstrating that there might be another way to live our lives in a society threatens their comfort. So like, good, snatch them up. Like, we need to, I don't want to have to think about if we could live differently, because so far this has worked for me. But I think it's a psychology piece. I think they do deep down understand that it's hypocritical, but adults do this all the time, is you build up walls in your mind to prevent your mind from going places that make you uncomfortable, or that threaten your sense of yourself. So you just don't even go there. And if you go there too quickly or too abruptly, and depending on what the thing is, you will have a mental breakdown. And that's why for this for this racial reckoning moment, I am careful to modulate my tone, so it's just not. So the subtext of my tone isn't, I'm mad at you and I want you to feel the pain I feel. The subtext of my tone is, I want you to empathize and understand my perspective so that we can grow together. Like, that's very apparent in my tone.
And do you feel like you have to do that being a black man, whereas I don't ever feel like I have to temper my tone? Or is that not?
I just
really?
recognize that if my goal is to make progress, if I lead too hard with my anger and frustration, I don't know if there's a psychological term for this, But there's this space where people get uncomfortable enough that it forces them to reflect, but they don't put a wall up. And it's a really delicate balance to find. But if you can push people, make them just uncomfortable enough for them to think about their biases or their assumptions, they will do that. But if you push too hard, they'll put a wall up, because if you shatter that sense of self, they'll have a mental breakdown. Like the reason why some people are resisting so hard to recognizing the need for this movement or acknowledging the horror or the extent of Black history is because they will have a mental breakdown. It's not that they're necessarily terrible people. They can't do it. They can't do it too quickly.
Yeah.
And I feel like, and it's funny because this racial reckoning moment, like I've been having this conversation with my students for a decade. So that's part of why I feel so prepared for it too. And then teaching predominantly white children, like I understand if I come in, it's like, hey, slavery, look at all this imagery, feel bad, look at how bad you white people are, white kids. They're gonna shut down, they're gonna block it out, and they're gonna be re-traumatized by the history. That's the other thing is, everyone's traumatized by American history, including white people. Even the like whitewashed, sanitized version of American history still traumatizes everyone. So then when you look at the details, if you do it too quickly and you're not in the right frame of mind, you'll have a existential crisis about who you are, where you've been, and I think that's part of what we're seeing, and perhaps what this mask thing is about is this crisis of identity, of like my whole identity's been based on American half-truths, distortions, and omissions. So I'm not ready to face and then that's the other thing is right now white people don't have an alternative. The alternative is you're a bad person. And that's why the white fragility book's being criticized so much, is because it's like, hey, the way to fix this problem is just think that you're bad. And that's not enough. And that's not fair either. You know, so I think that's part of, because I've been thinking about the mask thing too, and a lot of the protest memes of like the Black Lives Matter protest was like, I'm a human, and then the other one saying, I want a haircut. It's like, what is that? How do they not see that? And that's the only explanation I have.
How much of that not wearing a mask too comes from the fact that like we as a society usually distract ourselves with so much else, especially sports. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yes.
No matter what stress, no matter what anxiety, no matter what we're confronted with, it's like, okay, but I can watch football on Sundays, or I can watch this. And not having those things to kind of take us away have forced us to maybe reflect a little bit more.
Oh, yeah. No,
I feel like you were talking about some of those psych terms, like that idea of cognitive dissonance.
Yes.
When you've got two ideas in your mind that don't agree with each other, like maybe if you're talking about climate change, it's like, okay, I'm a good person and I want to like save the environment and things are getting, but like, how do you reckon with that? You could either change your lifestyle or you can just deny that it's real. Cognitive dissonance theory argues that we take the easy way out. And so on all these things, whether it's mask wearing or recognizing the issues we have with policing in this country, we are hardwired to take the easy way out as opposed to making the harder changes that we need to.
Okay, and see, that brings up another thing with the George Floyd protests. Like after the footage came out, I had people close to me who were white people, close to me who at first had never fully confronted the issue, beginning to do so. And then when the rioting and looting started shortly afterwards, they shifted to that. So they were experiencing that cognitive dissonance,
yep,
and shifting to just, but the looting and the rioting, that was the easier way out. So they didn't have to reevaluate themselves, their culture, society. They didn't have to do that hard work. That's easier. So that's interesting that you say that.
I think, and not to pick on the looting and the rioting people, but like, or the people who, the pick on the people who pick on the looting and the rioting.
Right.
Any surface level examination of U.S. history will demonstrate, I believe, that positive social change follows riots.
Right.
We have to be honest about that. I'm a pacifist, and I like to spread nonviolence as much as possible. I also recognize riots have produced positive change in this country. And not just in this country, but it wasn't just Gandhi's nonviolence movement that helped liberate India. Right. It was the collapse of the British Empire after World War II. It was people like Bhagat Singh who advocated for severe violence against the British Empire, and he was not alone. And so it, it's like, get over yourself.
We even,
I don't know.
Even in the kind of the history that kind of gets promoted a lot in public schools, and a lot of American history, when you look at like colonial history and you look at things like the Boston Tea Party, you look at like
that was a riot.
The Boston Massacre. I mean, do people realize that the Boston Massacre was a bunch of colonists surrounding British soldiers, throwing stuff at them? And I'm not, saying that the soldiers should have fired, but no, I'm saying you can look at that as, in a sense, a segment of colonial society protesting against police in the form of British policing of the city of Boston, where I think they had however many thousands of soldiers for such a small population in that city at the time. They felt, quote unquote, over policed.
Yeah, but they're all white, so it makes sense they'd fight back in the face of oppression.
Right.
The Browns need to just lay down and just accept your second class status. That's one of the other parts of cognitive dissonance I have, is that when you look back to American history, there are all these examples of Americans. I mean, our whole country is based on shedding off the oppression of another nation violently with a war.
Yeah.
So it just is weird that it's so the brown people suggest it's illogical that they'd respond this way to their treatment, or they don't believe the treatment is real, which that's the other thing that's always been frustrating as a black person, is people think black people are so flawed they can't even perceive their realities accurately. So there's no racism or oppression, you are just making excuses. It's you can't, that's the perception, you're so flawed you can't perceive your own reality accurately.
Could I just reread Frantz Fanon's book The Wretched of the Earth, because this time right now in America spoke to me, and how that book has a lot to teach us about this. And that book, for those of you who haven't read it, listening,
everyone but you.
Well, it's Fanon's description of the Algerian independence movement against France.
Okay.
And the first big chunk of the book is about violence, and how the violence, he argues, basically was necessary to free the colonized people, and that it was a natural response to the violence of the French, and this violence is interdependently co-created, and blah, blah, blah. But it got me thinking about black and brown folks in the U.S., black, Latino, indigenous people, etc., as colonized people. And do you think that is a fair comparison, or is that not apt?
No, I think that's fair. That's the other weird thing about being a black person is looking yourself in the mirror and being I'm here because of colonialism. People who look like me were brought here as objects. And I think, and that's also why black people create a sense of discomfort in white people. They look at me I'm a walking reminder of slavery. It's slavery is the thing. Oh, geez, okay. Let me just get my cereal here. I understand that. That is how people react to me. I know that's part of their reaction.
And not just that, but it's also a reminder of Jim Crow. It's also a reminder of redlining. It's also
all of that. Yeah. Well, people don't even... Jim Crow barely gets acknowledged in the discourse, and redlining is something else that's newly being acknowledged regularly. So that's the other thing that's so weird, is those things. Slavery was 400 years ago. It's Jim Crow was another century of barely better than slavery, but that gets glossed over always.
And now we got all the issues with voting rights right now.
Yeah,
I mean, how can you have 16,000 people with one polling place?
Yeah, that was Louisville, right?
I think that was, but it wasn't much better in Milwaukee when they voted in the primary. I think they had 3 polling places for the whole city.
Yeah, Louisville had 1 for the entire city, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Way more than 16,000.
So it was either, So, I mean, those issues go largely, or at least until now, have been largely unacknowledged, so hopefully that can change.
And then there's the continued economic stuff, like median wealth between people of color and white people. The COVID rates.
Yeah, it's literally everything.
Yeah, it's these things they cannot be disentangled. So when we're talking about wearing masks, it naturally has to go along with institutionalized racism. It's those things are oddly and mysteriously for some people, and obviously for some people, connected.
I also feel like the mask thing you know, especially since the interview. Well, first off, I feel like I'm an expert on white culture. Like, I feel like
you're an expert on white culture.
White culture, because I've always been told you act white and you're one of the good ones. So I've been given access, like unfettered access. And one of my observations is the racial piece gets used in white people's country mouse, city mouse argument that's going on. So the country mice always feel like the city mice are talking down to them and tell them they're stupid, they don't know what they're doing. And I think they at times lean into that perception of it, well, I think they think they're being rebellious, and the city mice think they're being stupid.
So we're the city mice.
You said it.
And I think what feeds into that too is in the when you talk about like infrastructure spending and like spending on education in those rural areas, that they haven't gotten the attention in some of those areas, which then fuels that even more.
Exactly.
Which, I mean, that is a problem we have in our country.
Yeah, no,
that we have rural areas with no infrastructure.
Right. And the other thing is, you know, colleges and universities are associated with the city mice, and they're, you know, and if a country mouse goes to a city mouse school, they come back acting all uppity, high and mighty, usually, but, you know, you have that whole divide there. And then I think the racial issue is something else that gets caught up in the country mouse, city mouse debate, and it just becomes like a political football that gets thrown back and forth. You know, I think the White Fragility book is emblematic of kind of the problem with the way city mice approach racism, because city mice do have a huge problem with racism, but they spend all their time and energy talking down to the country mice because their racism is way more blatant and obvious. Where the city mice racism is more covert and arguably more insidious. You have I feel like that's the other thing is like the North always is like, well, the South had slavery and like you guys need to get it together. Like we didn't have slavery up here. But it's like, but it's a codependent system. Like the cotton was being sold by northern factories. Like, you know, so I feel like there's always been an out for people who lived in the North for like racism in that sense. And you know, and it's, I don't know, just race makes people go so crazy, even black people, that well, I guess I'm reminded of one of the questions from the interview. Norton asked, why do you think all the black people are in the Democratic Party? And I feel like that's a thing that we kind of don't acknowledge it or confront it fully. We let a lot of things go unsaid, but it's obvious. The Republicans are so openly hostile. It's and it's weird, and they won't acknowledge their hostility. They're like, oh, it's not weird the KKK is not on the terror watch list. That's not weird, but you better put Black Lives Matter on there because they're domestic terror. Like, they don't acknowledge like that, the cognitive dissonance there. So they all go flocking to the Democratic Party, but then the Democratic Party wrote the crime bill.
Cut that part out.
That's what I was getting to, was like, not that, and that's another kind of myth about our culture, is that our presidential vote counts, in our minds it counts as something being way more significant than it actually is, and we're all completely tuned off to local politics. Vote for Patrick Lawler.
Yeah, let's talk about that. And let's talk about that. Let's hard pivot to Lawler, who's running for local office.
So I'm running for city council in Ward 5. So I've never done anything like that before. I've been teaching for 14 years, like teaching about history, local government. It's like, especially with all the protests lately and everything, it's like, well, I kind of need to practice what I preach. And if I feel like I can bring about change and help people, I need to get in on the ground and try to do something. So, but like you said, it's been kind of nice because, like, being so invested in local politics, you forget a little bit about the national level stuff that's going on that you tend to feel completely helpless about. And it's like, what can I do locally in my ward? Like, what can I learn about this area or this part of the ward? What do people need? And it feels more like it's empowering to focus more on local issues as opposed to national issues. And honestly, even though, yes, local governments do some of those controversial issues that divide kind of come up, so much of it is just genuinely helping people. And there's so much potential to build bridges, to get greater engagement of people. I don't know, it's been neat.
Yeah.
You already sound like a politician.
Do I?
No, he doesn't. It sounds like
Once you get elected, will this still be Social Buddies, or is this going to have to?
It'll be
take a hiatus.
Yeah, I don't know. It's already like my schedule's so much busier. Kind of trying to talk with different people, meet with different groups. It's been an experience, but I don't know. I've enjoyed it, and just learning about like how do you even run for office? Like if you want to, like what are the steps? And so I'm kind of learning about a lot of that as I go. What are you going
to do about those potholes in Ward 5?
The potholes?
Yeah, I've seen.
I mean, we got potholes everywhere.
You're gonna take care of potholes? Okay, good.
I think we can find some funds for that. I think I can think of some areas where we can find some funds.
You should start making promises that you have no control over.
Yeah. A free pizza for everyone every Wednesday. So I don't know. It's just a lot of philosophies that I've been kind of reading about and how cities should be managed. And you probably Cease is on the planning commission, so
I was my second or my last term was over. So
you think you need a second term?
Yeah, I'm good.
But you've been doing local government for a long time.
Yeah. It was interesting, but I served my limits, so I'm done on that.
You were in a role that was appointed.
Yeah, Mayor Renner
run,
appointed me to the Planning Commission, and I think it was 2 terms, 3-year term each, so that I ended up.
So is this true, Kevin? I've been hearing, Mr. Cease, that you were thinking about running for mayor?
No.
I'm still in like denial that like I have like the weird like time distortion from the shutdown. So I'm like, when you said the day at the beginning of this, I'm like, it's July what? And I'm just like in denial. Like the other thing is I feel weird because for the first time in a long time as a teacher, I can't envision what the school year is going to be like when it starts.
Same. I don't think I have a grasp of that yet.
Which makes it hard to plan for.
I don't know what to plan.
Also, I feel like there's this thing we're not allowed to acknowledge, the grieving though that everyone has just from all the changes and how different and the things that we're all to some extent missing out on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and it's not like obviously there are people dealing with deaths and permanent injuries.
Right.
That is terrible and horrible, but there's also a less acknowledged level of like, I don't know, like my kids are going to be missing out on probably Halloween this year,
right?
Which is like the coolest holiday.
I mean, like kids that are in sports, like it's not going to be the same no matter what.
And it seems like
end up being.
Especially when this started, people are like, oh, you can't, that's minor, that doesn't matter. But collectively, all the things that we are missing out on and how much it's affecting our lives over a year or two, like that is important. And I feel like it's important to acknowledge that and okay to kind of grieve over some of that stuff.
I almost feel like that is our role as teachers, is to almost facilitate. I know a lot of teachers don't like to take on that kind of responsibility, but I feel like the reality is like our role is going to be facilitating that process for them and with them. But just the curriculum and the schoolwork just seems secondary to us being human. Is that weird or?
We don't know how many days, weeks we'll be in school, so like there's that uncertainty too. Like any day now we're going to be quarantined and be back on lockdown or something. Like so, that to me is another thing that just how do you do this?
To psychology, it kind of makes me think of like Maslow's hierarchy. How like if you want to self-actualize, you want to like be the best student you need, like you have to have those lower levels of needs met.
That red level is just.
And you talk about that basic level, even with like food and like water, and that's an issue going to be an even a bigger issue this year. But it's that, especially that level above it, safety and security, which is so much of that is just stability, knowing every day when you wake up what to expect, what's going to happen. That kind of calms you down and allows you to focus on your day. And that security has just been kind of ripped away.
It's gone. It's completely
no matter how, and like that's something that if kids came from more kind of wealthy or privileged backgrounds, that could kind of insulate them. But it's all of our kids to some extent now don't have that.
I almost feel like the kids who are wealthier and more stable are the ones who are going to be taken for a loop harder because the other kids are like, I've always operated on this.
Like that's no resiliency built up.
That's something I thought that was interesting with the lockdown is, again, for white people, this level of, like, uncertainty is, like, this is what we live with all the time. Like, you guys have just been brought to our level. We always live with this sense of uncertainty and fear of what's going to happen. Like, this is what our lives were always like. So it's been interesting to watch white people go, oh my gosh, like what is what?
Yeah.
You know, so
I just had a disturbing thought. What does it look? What does it look like? This is the state of the country we live in. What does it look like to have an active shooter drill in a school during a pandemic?
Yeah.
Like that's the culture we live in right now.
that we I know. And so for me, something like that confirms that we live in a dystopia. Like, that's dystopian. We're going to do an active shooter. We have active shooters so frequent we have to do drills about it, but then try to conduct it in the midst of a pandemic. When we're sending kids, and the other thing that I can't get over is we shut everything down when there were like very little cases and no deaths. Now we have so many cases and deaths, and we're like, go back.
Let's get do it.
Like that doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah.
A lot of cognitive dissonance there for me.
Yeah.
Like what? That doesn't make any sense.
I feel like this is the perfect opportunity to really reckon with what purpose schools serve.
I was going to let you say this part.
And we're not doing that. Our culture is not ready to do that or willing to do that. And if we're not willing to do it now, I don't think there's the inertia built behind this institution is just too much. But it's like, what is the end goal of having kids go to school? Is it just gainful employment and socialization within our current status quo? And if that's the case, we can sacrifice some of that for the safety of everybody.
And we already have.
Yeah.
And it's just weird that we wouldn't.
Or is there some greater, if schools exist to like achieve some higher state of self-actualization or some higher state of critical thinking, I don't think the evidence bears that that's happening, really.
Under normal circumstances.
Yeah, under normal circumstances.
Yeah.
It sorts young people and spits them out into the economy. That's what it does.
And it houses them so their parents
can work. And so like if we're not willing to grapple with what schools actually do and what our role is in this project of socializing and sorting kids into the economy, we're not really able to grapple with what we could do in the present day to deal with something like the pandemic. Like, look, we can sacrifice some of these economic things in the short term. Who cares if students lose a year of school? Who cares? What?
Yeah.
All right, so they're a year behind in some math that they're never going to use.
Or a year behind in just the arbitrary track that we're put on to like progress through life. It's
Yeah,
like,
or not to pick on math. So they're a year behind in social. Like, okay, then they'll catch up later when they're interested and they read something online about. You know what I mean? They don't need me, really.
You're not supposed to say that out loud, Stephanie.
I think the thing though that not to be totally opposite of what you're saying, but like I think there are schools that are helping kids bring them out, like help provide meals and help provide that safety net that maybe they don't have at home, like, and maybe like helping those kids that may be abused or may be neglected to the extent that like the school helps provide that.
I agree 100%.
And so like
but I don't think we need school to do that.
No, I don't think we need school to do that, but I think schools are that. And
Right.
so like in those high poverty areas, the school provides that resource to the community, to the kids, to the parents, and like sure they're going to get a job, like it's helping to train those people to get a job eventually, but like we also
But perhaps
see
that model is outdated.
sure, yeah.
You know,
no,
perhaps schools don't
but I don't think anybody
need to exist.
in power is providing that
No.
as an option right now.
Right,
Unfortunately.
but what I'm saying is this time could be used to
Sure.
interrogate the normalcy of this institution.
Mhm.
You know, it hasn't been around that long in human history. Schools as they currently
It
exist.
hasn't changed.
And it hasn't changed much.
either.
Right.
And it was instituted to warehouse kids so their parents could go work in factories and to train those kids to go work in their factories.
Is that why they sit in the rows and they can't pee unless they're going to?
Oh yeah. I probably got into the wrong line of work, but
So, Robinson, what would be the right line of work?
yeah, I don't yeah.
No, I think it's important. You're in the right line of work because I do think the kids do need us, but it's the choice factor to it. It's like something I struggle with as a teacher, and is the fact that no one's going to learn anything they don't want to.
That's true.
Kids only, not kids, because I think adulthood's a myth, and we're all scared children trying to figure it out. no one learns anything they don't like. Or they don't learn things unless they want to. Like, nothing sticks unless you want to. So, like, the model of, like, learn this for the test and then regurgitate it and move on, like, that's never worked, actually. But I do think kids still need teachers and facilitators, but it works a lot better when the kid comes to you and says, hey, I've been reading this book, and they grab you and go, help me understand what I'm reading. Then it sticks. It's just the problem. I don't know if we're going to get even deeper, but I think our society, like our culture, doesn't inspire people to be inquisitive. Like, our culture is just based on pleasure seeking nonstop. And now with, phones especially, your average person, not a kid, your average person thinks the aim of life is to never experience discomfort and to always be titillated continuously. And anytime you're not titillated, you feel like you're numb. So then you don't notice any of like the subtle details of life, like local government. You can only attend to presidential elections with nonstop wall-to-wall coverage. Yeah. Like everyone in our society is geared towards just kind of, taking the easy route, essentially. Like our response to all cognitive dissonance, not just racially, but all cognitive dissonance is to take the easy route. So then trying to teach someone who's been indoctrinated into that mindset of like, look, I just want to be on my phone all day. Like, I will pee and I'll like shove food in my face without taking my eyes away from the phone. But if you left me to myself, that's what would happen. And that's been cultivated because a lot of times we're like, the kids did, like we did that to them. They do that because our society's done that to them. So we have to school is outdated. The model's got to be some sort of model that incorporates choice more, because that during this pandemic, I feel like we're never going to go back. I honestly feel like we're never going to go back to how things were. I think the 40-day work week is over. I think the previous model of school's over. Like we're never once we get a vaccine, when everything's settled down, school's going to be like the model that we have now of like half the kids go there. Like I think that might replace what we've been doing, and that might give us room to take another step towards making the institution fit with what we actually need out of society. Yeah. But I truly think like it's the 40-day work weeks or the 40-hour work week, 40-day work week. The 40 but it feels like I know. But I think those things are over. And honestly, it does. And that's, you're kind of joking about that, but they can't let that go too much, because then we will start to figure out other models for other institutions that we can improve, and it threatens the people in power, including the city mice.
One of the fears I have is that the views of somebody like me, who is very critical of the institution of schooling, is exploited by people like Betsy DeVos or whoever, because they want to exploit that, and then they want to privatize it all. You're right. We should get rid of public schools, and that's privatized. And that's not what I'm saying. Like, you have to take what I'm saying and go out to an even more macro level and reevaluate the entire economic structure and the entire culture.
That's never. I hope that can happen without a crazy, bloody conflict.
Yeah, my view.
That is the ultimate.
My views are always taken out of context. Like, he's anti-school. Like, no, that's.
Or you're
I've heard you're anti-human. This has been a real podcast.
I'm all fired up. Let's talk about one more thing before we wrap up. Mr. Belt, Chris Belt, your shirt right now says booty O's on the top. What are booty O's?
Oh God, this is another deep explanation. Believe that. But this is a shirt from wrestling. This is a product from professional wrestling, and I like it because it's like Lucky Charms. You're like, what? That's wrestling. So, and that's another thing. Like, wrestling is just performance art. I'm so into wrestling too. It's just performance art, and now people understand that, so they just get as goofy as they can. So I like that this, like, wrestling seems like the tough guy thing, and this is a shirt with colorful cereal on it. Add to that, they're all black guys. So these are 3 black wrestlers who were given a gimmick that was kind of really stereotypical, and they're supposed to be just like preacher guys, like, be positive, and that's what they were given. But in wrestling, you have creativity to take what you're given and put a spin on it, and if it makes money, you can do what you want. So they took that preacher gimmick and they turned it into this blurred is black nerd gimmick of like he plays the trombone and they have a unicorn horn and they like anime and like.
So wait, these are real wrestlers?
These are real wrestlers.
Really?
They're called the New Day. These are real wrestlers.
They're called the what?
The New Day.
The New Day?
Yes. So I like that it takes, and I'm just a misfit in general. So it takes something that has a perception of it, like wrestling is this really toxic masculine thing. This is a colorful pastel shirt. Add to that the perception of black people as being like these intimidating figures, but they're just eating Lucky Charms. So
That's
I know
awesome.
when people look at the shirt, they're just like, what is going on there?
That's why I don't go to roving parties.
Especially now that you're running for city council. Big boy.
You're not still recording, are
Oh,
you?
Avi's calling me.
What the
You're
heck?
not record. You
Hey.
turned it off, right?
Avi, no, it's recording. Hey, Avi, what's up? Yeah, Avi.
I was gonna say I can't run for office.
Can I listen to an audiobook?
You wanna listen to an audiobook?
Mm-hmm.
Which audiobook are you gonna listen to?
Any?
Any? Yeah, that's fine. You can listen to an audiobook.
Yay!
I'll be in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What do you want to have for lunch?
I don't know.
All right, I'll be in a minute.
I gotta get.
Wait, you gotta end the show with
Okay.
thanks for blah blah. Do your thing.
Thanks. Oh, some say like thanks for, and then I'll end it.
Huh?
I don't know what to
Okay.
say.
Well, thanks for coming on out and listening to us.
Hold on. You're too close.
Well, thanks for taking the time to listen to our show today and all the wonderful words we had getting thrown out into the mic. And as always, bye.
Everything kind of went off the rails there.
Yeah.